most often they're plugging into an electrical grid that is powered by fossil fuels. It's
Correct.
not necessarily coming from the sunshine that's captured on their rooftops.
That's exactly right. So as we integrate renewables, then we go full circle into having a fossil fuel-free energy economy.
Now, do you end up having to build an entirely new battery, or can you make incremental changes into the composition of existing ones?
We're doing both. We are definitely making incremental changes. For example, we're trying to extend life, increase capacity. The latest thing is we're thinking about how to charge batteries faster. But then we're also looking at new generations of materials and batteries that don't exist today to really go beyond the current boundaries that define what we think of as lithium ion.
The irony is also that these things have become so common in our hands, and at this point, we almost treat them as disposable objects. I mean, there's a planned obsolescence from the manufacturers. They know that they're going to get a little slower in 2 to 3 years, and they know that we're going to go out and buy another one, right? And one of the biggest problems that people have, and Apple even started to address this, is battery loss and the ability for us to recharge quickly or recharge fully.
Yeah.
And we're throwing away a computer
Yes,
because the battery is not working like it was 3 years ago.
correct.
So how do we fix, I mean, this is the thing that we actually have in our hands, right? But we're throwing it away really because the battery doesn't work and we can't change it.
So I think there's several things that contribute to that. One is fundamental understanding of batteries still needs to be done. The basic research to truly understand the limiting mechanisms is still underway. The second thing is it's kind of a trade-off in design. How big do we want the battery? How complex do we want the phone? So the more complex we make the phone, the more energy it consumes, it drains the battery faster, wears the battery out. So there's some middle ground that would extend the life of the battery, perhaps, but maybe that's not what the consumers look for. Maybe they want that smaller, fancier phone and are willing to sacrifice turning it in every 2 years.
All right, Esther Takeuchi, chemical engineer and professor at Stony Brook University. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Researchers have created a microscope capable of observing cells in 3D. With this new technology, scientists can watch videos of cells in their natural environments without needing to extract them. Eric Betzig, a group leader at Howard Hughes Medical Institute, joins us via Google Hangout to discuss the implications of this new technology. So, Eric, I probably, like most people in middle school biology class, remember looking at everything on a flat slide through this little microscope, and I never really thought about the fact that I was just looking at them in 2D. What's the importance? What's the leap forward in being able to see a cell in 3D?
Well, if you want to understand how the cell works, you can make an analogy to understanding how a car works or how the engine of a car works. And if all you had was a two-dimensional picture of it, it's pretty difficult to puzzle out how it works. But if you can see it in 3 dimensions and furthermore kind of take it apart or explode it apart, then you can get a better idea of what's going on.
All right, so how did you do it? How are you able to see something that is so tiny? It's not like you're getting the telescope to shrink down and looking from the side.
So it's think of it like a deli slicer, but which doesn't actually physically cut the cells. So it's a very, very thin sheet of light, which just scans one plane at a time as it goes through the cell, but it does it very rapidly. And from that, we computationally put together a 3D image. So that's one part of the problem, but the other part is to get it away from that cover or that glass slide that you talked about, which is like looking at cells in the Sahara, okay? They're not exactly exhibiting their native behaviors. So what you'd like to be able to do is look at cells in the environment in which they evolved, because that's the only way you're going to get the real picture. And so that's where another technology borrowed from astronomy comes in, adaptive optics, because as you look into multicellular organisms, the light gets scrambled by the other cells on top of the cell you want to see. And the adaptive optics unscrambles it so you can then use this deli slicer to get your 3D image of any cell inside of the organism.
So you're literally talking about some of the same techniques that we're using in high-power telescopes that help us look out across space.
Absolutely.
To try and look inside a single cell.
Yes, correct.
Now, the advantage of looking at a cell in the Sahara, as you say, was the fact that we could put these cells into middle school classrooms and we could make them portable and whatever. I'm assuming that your microscope is not that small.
That would be correct. So in the original prototype in our paper, it fills a 10-foot table. We are hard at work on actually producing one that will fit on a small coffee table that we would like to make accessible to other labs. So that, you know, if you have one microscope in the world that can do this thing, it's like having one Hubble Space Telescope. You know, it's a pretty narrow bottleneck to get results. And so the path to success is replication and getting other people to be able to do it as well.
Now, you've also called your microscope a three-in-one microscope. Explain.
Well, in the sense that it is this deli slicer in the center, but the way it works is you have to create this thin sheet of light, which is the knife, so to speak. But then you have to look at the light which is generated in the cell, actually perpendicular to that knife to see what's going on. And the trouble is the light that goes in gets warped and the light that gets out gets warped. So it's two adaptive optic microscopes and one deli slicer. So that's the 3-in-1.
Got it. How long until you can actually replicate this microscope and get it to a scale and an affordability level where there could be 100 or 1,000 or 100,000 of them?
Yeah, well, I'd be happy with 100 to begin with, but the goal for us is to have this new version ready sometime late this fall. And the deli slicer part, it actually was has been replicated in probably over 100 labs now. And again, we have a pretty well working model about how to document these things so it becomes easy for others to replicate. And we're going to replicate that model for this new microscope, so it's hopefully as successful as the last one.
So in this pursuit of science, you're basically giving away the ingredients and the how-to kit on how someone can do this for themselves, or I should say labs can do this for themselves. How much time and energy went into making that first one, and then how much time and energy now that the blueprint exists to make the second one?
Yeah, so time and energy on the first one, you're probably looking at the culmination of about 4 years of effort by maybe 2 or 3 people. The new one is at least as much effort.
What are some of the things that you think you see being impacted just by shifting the perspective and the view? I mean, because when you look at cellular, our understanding of how cells work, it's always been in a two-dimensional level, unless there's computational models.
Even worse, I mean, it isn't even so much thinking two-dimensionally, it's thinking statically. So if you open a college textbook on biology and you look at the picture, the drawing they have of a cell in there and its internal organelles, to me, I view that as a caricature of what the cell really is. It isn't even a representation, it's a caricature. The cells are, I think the picture which is coming out of microscopes, which I really consider a 4D microscope because it's 3D plus the time. And the time is a critical element of it because the thing that defines life is that it's animate and it's moving. Again, you would never understand the engine in your car if the pistons were all frozen together in the view you got, right? So I think what these new microscopes are showing is how incredibly dynamic and by chance how things bump together, even at the molecular level, which is actually what drives everything that makes you and me.
So really, we're talking how we understand, for example, how drugs work, usually on the receptors and binding areas of specific cells. That's all been with an understanding of a plane and a fixed point in time.
Well, not even so much a plane, but for example, typical drug discovery works in terms of a lock and key.
Yeah.
Pocket in one protein, and you try to have a drug that fits in that pocket so the other protein can't get there. But that's only one way of looking at it. There are other types of interactions between proteins that are much more transient and sort of just a kiss and run kind of thing. And so I think these new microscopes are revealing that and actually will therefore offer different types of strategies for drug discovery than the traditional.
All right, Eric Betzig from the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Hari.
Hospitals across the nation are challenged with maintaining a bacteria-free environment for patients. Now at one hospital in New Jersey, a robot named Jimmy is making sanitization easier. Reporter Leah Mishkin has the story.
2 buttons are pushed. You have 15 to 30 seconds to leave the room. Then the Zenex robot, temporarily named Jimmy, begins a treatment cycle. The company behind Jimmy and the Light Strike technology says it's using pulsed xenon to create this UVC light. Unlike UVA and UVB, known for damaging skin, UVC is mostly absorbed by the ozone layer and doesn't reach Earth. Zenex says superbugs, germs, and bacteria have no resistance to it, and they die in 5 minutes or less.
People have to actually leave the room. Why is that?
Yeah, it will not harm people. It will not penetrate your skin. If you're in the room, though, the light is, as we mentioned, super intense, super bright. And so if you stare at it for a long time, it could irritate your eyes.
According to a National Institute of Health study, long-term exposure to UVC could be harmful by causing acute and chronic eye and skin damage. This robot has motion sensors and won't even turn on if it detects people. Hunterdon Medical Center's Lisa Razumowitz says her role is to prevent the spread of infections.
If you go to a hospital, you might even get more sick just because of what you're exposed to.
Yeah, the thing about hospitals is that there are sick patients here. So it is possible that as you're sick, as your immune system is weak, if you do get exposed to somebody else's germs, that potentially you could pick up another infection. But we in the healthcare field have been working on this forever.
Enter Jimmy, the hospital's second robot. They bought it after seeing a drop in hospital-acquired infections.
So when you're saying you're seeing a drastic difference, what are we talking?
So we've already seen in the short time that we've been using the robot in ICU, we've already seen at least a 55% decrease in our C. diff cases. We also have had 0 MRSA infections in our ICU patients. We've had 0 central line bloodstream infections in our ICU patients. So we're really we're seeing the goal that we set for ourselves.
It cost about $125,000, but the company says by preventing just a couple of infections, it pays for itself.
And do you think this technology could be used in other places, not just in hospitals?
Yeah, we're looking at application in college and professional sports programs. We're looking at airports. We're looking at everything.
Technology helping to prevent the spread of what is left behind.
And that wraps it up for this time. For more on science, technology, and innovation, visit our website. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram, and join the conversation on Twitter. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until next time, I'm Hari Srinivasan. Thanks for watching.
Funding for this program is made possible by Sue and Edgar Wackenheim III, and contributions to this station.
Next time on Antiques Roadshow, do these objects give you thrills or chills?
I don't think I'd want to meet them in a dark alley.
My wife will be so relieved.
I hope she is.
Tune in for our special edition Antiques Roadshow Kooky and Spooky.
All new tonight at 8 on WLIW 21.
Nature's three-part series continues. From the oldest desert in Africa to the highest mountain on Earth, cats are leading extraordinary lives. They are acrobats in the jungle and opportunists on the beach. Big or small, cats have conquered the planet.
Thursday night at 9 on WLIW 21.
See this patio? There used to be a motorcycle sitting there, a bike I didn't use and didn't want, so I donated it to public television, and they took care of everything. In addition to supporting my favorite programs, I earned a tax deduction. Turn something you don't need into something you really want. Contact the Vehicle Donation Program.
Tonight on Metro Focus. A measles outbreak in New York. Is your family safe? Brooklyn rocks and reads. Meet the men and women risking everything to fight wildfires. A Yiddish fiddler, resident Yenta Jackie Hoffman, takes us inside the production, plus your focus of our Metro. Tonight at 7 and 11 on WLIW 21.
Oh my gosh, get ready, get ready.
I got it, Vince.
Now in its 9th year, Doc NYC is America's largest documentary film festival.
The original and the best.
This year, Doc NYC presents over 300 films and events with more than 500 special guests.
What? This is crazy.
November 8th to the 15th at the IFC Center, SVA Theater, and Cinepolis, Chelsea.
Good choices. Yeah, you like that, huh?
For tickets and more information, go to docnyc.net.
On Native America.
Our history goes back to the beginning of time.
Inspired by their deep respect for nature.
We are a part of this forest as much as the forest is a part of us.
America's first peoples formed a government that inspired the U.S. Constitution.
This is the birthplace of democracy.
Native Americans created some of the most advanced nations on Earth.
Architects and artists made things of extraordinary wonder and imagination.
All new tonight at 9 on WLIW 21.
PBS NewsHour on WLIW 21 is made possible in part by the Cy Sims Foundation. It takes many different things and people to make WLIW work. Talent, creativity, dedication. The Cy Sims Foundation is proud to support WLIW. The Cy Sims Foundation, supporting progress in education, science, and the arts since 1985.
Good evening, I'm Judy Woodruff. On the NewsHour tonight, less than a week from the critical midterm elections, we take a look at some of the close Senate races that will help decide the balance of power in Washington. Then new details in the murder of Jamal Khashoggi as the brother of Saudi Arabia's monarch returns to the kingdom, raising questions about the country's leadership. Plus, inside the fight surrounding the mining of phosphorus in Florida, essential for agriculture, but it may be linked to devastating environmental problems.
We would work roughly 200 people, a tremendous economic impact on these two counties.
Education is the most important thing we can do to tell the people what the threat is. This will destroy Bradford County. It will destroy its attraction as a rural paradise.
All that and more on tonight's PBS NewsHour.